Hi, this is Roger Green, host of the Surfing the NASH Tsunami podcast. This weekend, we are offering 5 conversations from episode 13, our preview of the upcoming Innovations in NAFLD Care Conference in Barcelona. And from the vault, we have conversation 24.4 from season 3, the last part of our wrap-up episode from the inaugural INCBCN conference last May. It's interesting to review what Jeff Lazarus and Jörn Schattenberg anticipated then as compared to what we discussed in previewing this year's conference. In this wrap-up conversation, I asked the panelists 2 questions. First, what will we see in Nashville and the broader world of metabolic disease 6 months from now that will tell us this conference has been a success? Second, what do the co-chairs anticipate will be the mechanisms by which a smaller meeting like this one will have impact on a broader population? The answers vary widely, and most are visionary, some even eye-popping. You'll need to listen to hear and absorb what everyone has to say. The inaugural INCBCN conference was a truly innovative meeting concept that produced fantastic discussions, lessons, and insights. These conversations can tell you what to anticipate this year, so just sit back, listen, enjoy, learn, and when you're done, join the dialogue on our LinkedIn discussion group. So now it's November of 2023. What will tell you whether this meeting has worked out in the 6 months following? It's worked as you hope. What would we see that would tell us that?
Jeff McIntyre.
There's always a couple of KPIs. After last meeting, we didn't stop. So a number of us worked together to publish an article about it, highlighting key aspects of the meeting that we published in Nature's new open access journal, Communications Medicine. And that recently came out. So that was probably November 2022. November 2023, we have speakers who have asked if they can come back. We have an organizing committee that said, let's do this again. And we have all of the funders lined up. If someone said you have enough funding to have 300 or 400 people, I'd say, okay, but I probably don't want more than 150 people in the room and everyone else can come in online. There's a purpose to this meeting, as Jörn mentioned as well. I mean, everybody's kind of in the room. So last year when we were well over 100 people, that included the people online as well. If it gets too big, it becomes a different kind of meeting. We're not looking to compete really with any of the existing meetings. We're filling a gap and looking to have really informed conversations. I'd like to see feedback on which aspects we want to grow. Like you were saying, Louise and Roger, different kinds of patient groups involved, nurses and others more front and center. Do we grow endocrinology? We'll do whatever really the feedback tells us to do. We'll do the best we can based on that feedback. But I'd like to see a November that said funding was in place. There's a lot of excitement for this to happen again in 2024 in Barcelona.
Okay, that's a great start. If people are supportive, then that says you've done something worthwhile. Absolutely. So the one question I have, Jeff, when I think about a meeting this small is, in how many ways can the insight gathered there make its way out into the broader population?
Well, again, by having leaders in the field, the idea is that they bring it back. So by having heads of organizations, heads of large hospitals, we wrote it up for a journal. There were a couple interviews held. You're helping in a huge way bring this to a larger audience. So, conferences work in different ways, and most are more traditional scientific conferences. We're speaking to our peers and we're changing practice. So here we have, representative of WONCA, we have representatives from obesity and diabetes in addition to liver, and hopefully it will trickle out because we're actually holding the meeting because we want to make a change, not because we need another abstract accepted and added to our CV or an invited talk. This is people who are committed to advancing the field in a different way than the metrics many of us are used to. Well, most of the people speaking don't need to abide by those metrics anymore. They're above, they're tenured, and they're well published. But for many people and most people, we have certain metrics that are really about publication. And this is really about top line presentations coupled with exciting, engaged discussions.
I love the meeting, and I think it will be fascinating to see the ways that evolve to get the integrated thinking in the meeting into a world that has lots of ways to handle siloed thinking and fewer ways to handle integrated thinking. So that was really what was behind my question. And I take your answer, which is probably more organically than anything else. We are heading towards the top of the hour, which means we're heading towards done. That was not my closing question. My closing question was, if you had a guess, how do you envision the agenda might impact the next 12 months? And what would you see maybe might be a bigger focus in 2024? And I know that we're guessing, and I'm not going to hold anybody to it. but it's always a fun question. Brave one, go first.
Jörn Schattenberg.
Let me start here. I do see that the discussions we're having is going to shape the field. We're going to design our research questions and asking how can we interact with the other experts, primary care, secondary care, in identifying those patients at risk. I think the discussions we're having here will form, from my scientific and academically orientated work, the basis on which research study do I need to set up, or which project do I have to develop to really increase the access of patients with or at-risk liver disease to be diagnosed and potentially have access to care. I think this is one thing for me personally. I think in addition for the attendees, clearly we will come up with ideas on how to implement therapies and novel diagnostics that will become available. And I think some of the ideas we bring forward will in the end make it to the field. As such, I do see us as a think tank that will develop the care provision of patients with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Thanks, Jörn. That all makes tremendous sense and pretty good aspiration at the same time. Jeff?
I see over the next year a continuation of the important issue of developing models of care that are fit for purpose. When we started a few years ago and reviewed the literature, we came up with 8 published models of care that fulfilled the criteria of the who, what, where, when, and to some extent how a model of care can be multidisciplinary, can help be people-centered, that can be effective. And this kind of meeting is bringing together the different players in this kind of model of care. So diabetes, primary care, various patient groups, hepatologists, of course, nurses. And how do we advance the field around the all-important issue of getting people diagnosed, getting them risk stratified, getting them the treatment and care they need? One thing I'd like to look at further ahead, and this is going to be part of this debate, chicken or the egg, treatment as prevention, but also prevention as prevention, right? Because the numbers are so big, and the latest prevalence meta-analysis that Dr. Younossi just published in hepatology with the team shows that it continues to grow. Over a third of the adult population estimated to have, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So we need to be thinking really big, and hepatology is not going to be able to do this alone. So for me, it's really about the whole of society approach, the whole of health system approach to addressing this, as you would call it, tsunami.
Louise Campbell.
Yeah, I agree with both Jeff and Jörn on that. The way I've seen this conference framed, it's about liver health. It's not about only hepatology dealing with liver disease. And I think that removes the competitive nature of silo healthcare. I'm a cardiologist, I'm an endocrinologist. That if we all drive like we do to try and locate people with cancer, if we drive to locate people with poor liver health, and I know I say it a lot, but rule it out, don't wait to rule it in. It's a better scenario. The way this conference is framed for this year is about removing those barriers and letting us all think liver healthy. And for that for me is the way I see it going. We all have a liver. We just assess people, and the ideas that will be taken through there, particularly if yes, people drink alcohol, but people eat crisps, people have bad habits. We can't individually rule them out. We have to look after the liver beneath and make alterations, dealing with the human person. And that's what I've enjoyed about looking at how this conference is framed now and going in that direction. So I can see both Jörn's outcomes and Jeff's envisaged in this type of framework.
I agree with all that. And the thought I'm having as I'm listening to this wrap up is that what will happen in the next year is we will probably get drugs. And it will be interesting to see how approvals, even if only in the U.S. in the next 12 months, shape all the questions you're dealing with here. It's always been hypothesized that primary care will become much more interested once there are medications. Endocrinology will become much more, even hepatology, but certainly the frontline treaters. So it will be interesting to see how this amazing work that you guys are doing and the fantastic vision behind it play out in terms of not making this just about, okay, now we've got drugs, now we can prescribe something, we're done. But to envisage the holistic nature of the problem and to see drugs as an amplifier and, if you will, a booster rocket, but not the end point of the venture, or even maybe the end of the beginning, but not the reward in itself, if that's clear.
And now, back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please put them in the review section of the page from which you downloaded this conversation, or send an email to questions@surfingnash.com. Next week, we may post our episode on Thursday to accommodate Jörn Schattenberg's schedule, returning from 2 major events in California in the presence of a strike in Germany. We've not locked down the topic yet, but the 2 we're considering are both quite important. Until then, stay safe, surf on. See you next week on the podcast. Bye-bye now.